Good evening, or good afternoon, I should say, everybody, and welcome to an impromptu video, really. I wasn't planning on doing this today at all. In fact, I was planning on being on someone's podcast about half an hour ago, but we all got a bit pushed for time, so we're going to do that another time. And while I had my phone out and everything else, and I was in that sort of frame of mind, I thought, sod it, I may as well do a quick video. I was going to do one yesterday, funny enough, because for those of you who may or may not be aware, yesterday was certainly in line with our history books, quite a poignant date. And the date was the date of what we call the Normandy landings in Europe, which marked the beginning of the end of World War II in terms of military combat. So it was allegedly the largest ever concentration of forces to be ever seen by mankind or womankind and everything in between kind, and all the rest of it. And I did, I'll be honest with you, follow quite a bit of it actually. And I was talking to my partner about this yesterday, Sandra, at length, because I was sort of saying to her, I don't really buy into most of the officialdom at all, and it's getting less and less and less, of course, as time goes by. Especially after the last few years and what's happened, it's made it very clear and obvious as to how you can lie to a population in a very surreptitious and subtle way and get away with it. And that includes, of course, wars and such like. You can most definitely over-exaggerate certain situations, create a narrative, and thus form perceptions for people moving forward. And no doubt about that's going on to this very day with certain things that are going on around the world, be it the Ukraine war, be it what's going on in the Middle East, or other hotspots around the world, around meaning circular, two-dimensional, flat, like the picture behind my right shoulder. By the way, that picture behind my right shoulder is the azimuthal equidistance map of Earth. It is, I do believe, from 1896, I think, the new standard map of the world. We know it as the Gleason's map. And it's not there to give me necessarily an accurate depiction of what our realm looks like, because to be honest with you, I don't think many of us know. I think there are very, very few who reside in this realm that actually know the true nature of this earth in terms of land masses and such like. It would be very, very easy to hide from people, let's face it. But it's just a reminder that, the only way you could navigate or map or anything of the sort, or measure in fact, would be to use elevation angle measurements from a flat plane. You can't do it from a globe, bendy surface. That's impossible. I use these drumsticks as an example. That would be the horizon, or what you're standing on. It's the bit that you're navigating, and your measurement that you're taking, you're here. That's the vertex, and that's your angle in between the two drumsticks. And the one that's going in the vertical is your elevation angle measurement to, in this case, to ascertain your latitude lines, all latitude lines, Polaris. So the gap in between the vertical and the prerequisite, which is the flat horizon, is your angle. And that is what's used all the time and can only be used like that in order to then eventually navigate your position, for example, on the open oceans, and you might be navigating thousands of miles of ocean to figure out where you are in your boat, for example, right? So that is your elevation angle there. This bit here, the flat horizon, is a prerequisite. It's not a choice. It's not a flat earth thing. It's what has to be. It's as simple as that. The same would apply if you're doing trigonometry and having to work out the height of a tree or a mountain, right? There are historical things set in stone that tell us how, let's say, the Earth's radius was calculated by a guy called Al-Biruni, right? By which we're told he went to the top of a mountain and calculated the difference between his eye level on the top of the mountain and the ground that he just came off and climbed up from. But of course, before he did all that, he would have had to know the height of the mountain. And the only way you can calculate the height of the mountain is to do trigonometry, which involves, as a prerequisite, not choice, a flat surface. You need a flat surface for that to work, right? I knew my drumsticks would come in handy one day. So that is it in a nutshell. And that thing there over my shoulder reminds me of that. That's what it's there for me. It's not for me to navigate with or anything like that. It's just to remind me that it's the only way Earth can be measured and navigated on, and all the rest of it is by using elevation angle measurements that require a flat baseline, which is the ground that we reside on. That's not a flat Earth theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's the way it is. It's the way it's done. If you don't like it, take it up with whoever came up with the realization, and that's the only way it can be done. Anyway, getting back to the Normandy landings, or D-Day as it's called colloquially. Of course, to navigate across the English Channel, they would have had to use those very methods, by the way. Like I said, myself and Sandra spoke about it at length, and I started talking about why I feel drawn to that topic, because I used to be, as a kid as well, D-Day and the Normandy landings used to always fascinate me. Not from a voyeuristic point of view in terms of, there's going to be lots of guns and shooting and all the rest of it. No, not really. It was just the whole concept of, as a human being, jumping on a boat, going across a body of water, not knowing what to expect. Are you even going to get off your landing craft in one piece? As soon as the things went down, the ramps went down, people were being killed before they'd even left the ramps. And there's plenty of footage that you can see that proves that they're not stories, that have been invented. People did get killed there on those beaches. But what we did start talking about was, it made me wonder about my own personal heritage. And the fact that in my case, for example, I'm basically a product of World War II. Why do I say that? Well, I say that because, for example, my father's parents and my mother's parents, they met because of the war. Because neither of my grandparents, both on the British side or the German side, because I have a German mother, neither of my grandparents came from the same regions. They ended up meeting in a region where they didn't both come from. One of them came from there, but the other one moved there. So, for example, my English grandfather came from Guernsey, and after the war ended up in Liverpool, and that's where he met my gran. On my German side, my German grandfather, he came from a part of Germany that's now Poland, called Silesia, and he ended up in western part of Germany after the war, after coming out of captivity, because he was taken prisoner by the Irish Guards, for example, and thus met my German grandma. So that was really the fascination of that conversation between myself and Sandra about, thinking about how many people, because I won't be the only one, how many people's existence can be, brought back to the event that we call World War II. As we also know, these events, I'll call it that, like World War II, they cover a lot of bases. And one of them is the shifting of millions and millions of people. I'm sure many of you are aware that just in Europe alone, how many people got resettled is just absolutely unbelievable. And we're not even talking about the children here. We're just talking about grown-ups. There were, of course, other things going on, in my view, of a more sinister nature that we don't talk about that much. I don't know how many people know this, but I'm sure you know that in World War II, many children were sent to the countryside here in the UK. in order to be saved from German bombings. And guess what the operation was called to get the kids into the safety of the countryside? It was called Operation Pied Piper. What a name to give to such an operation. Because if anybody knows the story of Pied Piper of Hamelin, well, perhaps you could add two and two together and come up with your own conclusion. Yeah, without me getting too conspiratorial about it all, but certainly it raises an eyebrow or two when you think about it like that. But anyway, I thought that was just worth sort of mentioning that, because at the end of the day, how far back can we go in terms of our own personal heritage? We talk about family trees and all the rest of it. How far do we go back until it just becomes paperwork? I can verify back to my great-grandma, for example, on my dad's side of the family. She was from Paris. But no further than that. I met her, but I was only tiny, but I met her, or she met me. And she passed away shortly after she got to know me when I was a toddler. But far much more before that, you're not really going to get, are you? And it's the same with my mother's side of the family. And I'm sure the same goes for all of you. On paper, I'm sure we can go back lots and lots and lots of generations. But how much of it is literally verifiable? How much of it can we actually nail and validate and say, yep, that is a fact. That is for definite. So looking at that from that perspective, how easy is it then to fake our history, right? And that plays into my fascination, again, with the old world buildings and such like, because I personally, having done quite a bit of research on it, truly think, not believe, think that our civilization as we know it today, our society as we know it today, doesn't go back much further than the so-called Industrial Revolution. So I would say the late 1700s, early 1800s, and that is it. That is it. Not much further beyond that or before that. Yeah, and there are plenty of reasons, and I'm not going to start with them here, but there are plenty of reasons for why I say that. Not just the fact that literally everything of significance was invented and thought up in the 1800s. So our history books have us believe that for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we were doing nothing as a human race but sitting around in fields plucking potatoes until one day someone woke up and said, let's invent some steam power. And then it went on from there. And before you knew it, we had a whole civilization up and running before we hit the 20th century. I don't believe that for 1 minute. It doesn't make sense at all in any way, shape or form. Which then begs the question, well then who built all those magnificent structures? Because it certainly can't have been us, because the capability to do so didn't arrive, in inverted commas again, until the 1900s, the 19th century I should say, which is the 1800s. But yeah, so it's all sort of linked together, the events of things like World War II, before that World War One, and then whatever came before that, and then it starts drying up a little bit after that in terms of real knowledge, but it's certainly something worth investigating and looking at, and I would suggest that everybody does that if they got some spare time. I don't mean ordering these family trees online for a few pounds, but actually having a look yourself. Can be done. But anyway, yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. It was something that was on my mind yesterday, having spoken to Sandra about it at length, and we were both like going, yeah, that's quite interesting. I wonder how many other people have a similar sort of story that simply wouldn't be here if it weren't for the war. So was that the reason for the war? To populate? It certainly would have been one of the reasons, that's for sure. Anyway, what else was I going to say? Yeah, today I had quite an interesting day. I had to go to a clinic today. This is like some follow-on aftercare treatment, if you like, having spent a week or so in hospital very recently, and before that having struggled with some health issues. But the interesting thing was I got talking to a lady who was in the same vehicle as I was when I was taken to the clinic this morning. And we started talking, and it ended up getting quite heated because it ended up well, we ended up talking about, and disagreeing, of course, about the notion of global warming. Of course, you have to live on a globe first and foremost. Um, but it was very, very interesting because she then began to do this classic thing, which was project onto me her own behaviors, accusing me of being provocative, being argumentative, raising my voice. And I wasn't. I was staring out the window with my sunglasses on, trying to stay calm and relaxed, because who wants to get worked up before they have to deal with medical people and deal with their own health issues and stuff like that? You know, you want to get there as chilled as you possibly can. So I certainly wasn't up for an argument or a fight or anything like that. We ended up afterwards getting on quite well, but for a little while there, we had a little bit of a row in the back of this van, this transport van that was laid on by the NHS. And yeah, and one of her arguments to me was, I've been on this planet longer than you have. Okay, right. So I thought that was a cracker. Again, it's like, well, what's that got to do with anything? Who cares how long you've been on this planet? I was going to expand and say, and who even says we're on a planet, but I didn't want to turn her brain into mush too early on in the conversation, so I decided not to. But that was very interesting, because I then said to her that I can point out some photography, for example, from Bournemouth right here, going back very, very many decades, and you'll notice no difference in the coastline. You will notice no raising of water levels or anything of the sort. And yet we're supposed to believe that we're going to be underwater very, very soon. It's all nonsense, of course. It's all fear-mongering. We all know that. And it's also a way to justify all the stuff that they're spraying in our skies for our protection, which, of course, is further nonsense. I mean, the for our protection bit is further nonsense. The fact that they're spraying stuff in the sky certainly isn't nonsense. That is definitely going on. In fact, governments admit it. They have to, because you're noticing it, you can see it. But I thought that was quite interesting how triggered people get just because you stand your ground a little bit and don't go along with the official narrative. That is my experience when I talk about the shape of the earth with people, for example. I still to this day don't understand why people get so triggered by it. Isn't it in all our interest to figure out the truth? Why would anybody get triggered by a topic like that? I really don't get it. I certainly didn't get triggered when it was first mentioned to me. I found it a curious thing and I found it intriguing, but I certainly didn't start ridiculing the person who was talking to me about it when I first came across it as an idea to look at or anything like that. Now, for example, not only do I believe that the Earth is not a spinning ball hurtling through an impossible vacuum of space, but I know that the Earth is measured flat, which means it must be so, right? It is measured flat, you know, and I keep repeating myself on that. I also know that gas pressure cannot exist without containment. The word pressure giving that away, because pressure is what is the measurement, or is what you get off what's pressing off the insides of a container, the walls of a container. That is your pressure. That's the definition of it. I made a bit of a mess of my version of the definition, but you catch my drift. You know, it comes from the word to press, pressure, right? These are facts that eluded us when we went to school, and by the time you leave school and maybe even college, and you get out and get your job and you blend in with society, you know, the ship has sailed, hasn't it? You no longer kind of revisit that topic at all. And then when you do years later, like I have done and many, many others have done, you know, you start getting pot shots from here, there and everywhere, including close friends and even family with some people. That's not the case with me, but I know a lot of people who have had some real issues with family members, for example, around this topic, just because they've said, well, go and check it out. Have a little look. Do your own observation. Why is it that I can see the Isle of Wight from Bournemouth from 1 foot elevation, when according to the official narrative, I shouldn't be able to see further than 1.22 miles from a foot elevation, right? Because we're told that the Earth is a certain size. So yeah, it's a tricky old undertaking to be questioning things nowadays, because you'll fall into the categories, or you'll be dragged into the categories of misinformation, fake news, and all the rest of it, very, very quickly, by a population who simply doesn't know better, and their default setting is to ridicule you and to ostracize you and to appeal to consensus because they feel safe that way. Sad state of affairs, really. So what's the option? Go along with the masses? No, that cannot be the option, surely. Because then if that's the case, then what's the bloody point? Because where's your individuality? Where's your thinking for yourself? Where's your proactivity? Where's your initiative in all of this? Does it just get left by the wayside? Well, what a bloody mighty shame that would be. You know. But anyway, I'm rambling on a little bit. It's already 20 odd minutes. But I just wanted to sort of bring over a couple of those thoughts to you, because they were on my mind, really. And specifically the ones from yesterday, the 80th anniversary of D-Day. And they had a lot of the old soldiers there, men and women, who partook in that operation back then. They didn't talk much from the German perspective, of course, because it was very much through the eyes of the Allies. So that would be the British, the French, the Americans, the Canadians, etc., etc., etc. But I can assure you that there's also a German perspective on this. And I don't mean Nazi German perspective. I mean the normal guys and girls who served on the German side, also just doing their job, carrying out orders and all the rest of it. Like my German granddad, who got conscripted at the age of 17, I think. And what saved him from going to the Russian front and being sent there to almost certain death was the fact that he had a driver's license at a very young age. And then he ended up getting caught and captured by the Irish Guards in Rimini in northern Italy. And that was his saving grace. And because he knew that British officers who were running the camp didn't like their fried eggs broken, i.e. that the yolk ran out of the eggs, they used to break the eggs on purpose so they had more to eat. And he also handed in his Iron Cross Mark II for bars of chocolate because he didn't care too much about the medal. And he definitely did get that medal because I saw the certificate and that goes with it. But that's another story. I've got plenty of stories to tell about that. I grew up having some very, very fascinating evenings with my grandparents. I used to ask them lots and lots of questions about how things were back in the day. Their own children, as in my parents, didn't really do the questioning and the asking. That was left more to the grandchildren, so myself. They kind of skipped a generation when it came to passing on the knowledge of what went on in World War II, which is also an interesting fact, especially on the German side, for obvious reasons. But anyway, I am definitely waffling and going off on a tangent now, so I shall leave it there. Larry says hi. He's moved about a bit. He decided to sit on one of the high stools and keep an eye on me a little bit and protect that map that's behind him. I call it a map because it says map on the top of it. So really, on that note, I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've all had a good week, and I hope you enter the weekend in good spirits and all the rest of it. And I hope you have a good weekend. Enjoy everything that you do. You've got to get enjoyment out of everything you do in life. If you don't, again, then what's the point? And I hope to see you again soon, because I'm going to do another video in the next few days. I did say that I was going to do an old world one and take a close look at a couple of buildings. Haven't got round to that, unfortunately, but I will do. I did, by the way, recently do a video on, basically bullshit detection time, which was me talking about a little news item that discussed China's landing of a craft on the far side of the moon. Hilarious that anybody still buys that nonsense. Really is hilarious. Anywho, on that note, I shall bid you all farewell. I will see some of you soon. Well, all of you soon, I presume, because most of the people who do look at my channel, and I quite like that about my channel, I actually know personally as well, so I get a chance to meet you and come across you and talk to you, which is great. Oh, by the way, talking about seeing you all soon, just a reminder that there is a Flat Earth Social on Tuesday the 25th of June in the Bridge Hotel in Ferndown, just on the outskirts of Bournemouth. Dave Weiss is coming over to grace us with his presence and give a chit chat, and I do believe it's £5 English pounds, British pounds, pound sterling, however you want to call it, entry fee. If you're really lucky, you'll have one of the new pound notes with King Charles's head on it. There you go. So I won't say anything to that. But on that note, I will see you all soon. Some of you much, much sooner, of course. So until then, take it all easy, and ta-ta for now.